This is Karen Brazovich, and I'm the coordinator for our first Thursday speaker series. A couple of ground rules. Our speaker, Toby Bayard, will be sharing her screen, so I will ask that everyone mute themselves. Toby will speak at first and share her PowerPoint presentation, and then be open for questions. And questions can be placed in chat, and I will read those questions for her so she doesn't have to multitask quite so much. So welcome everyone to our first Thursday speaker presentations. This is the kickoff for our 2021-2022 calendar year. Our speaker today is Toby Bayard. She is the Executive Director for Supporters of Literacy in Deschutes County, and she's also a member of our local League of Women Voters of Deschutes County. Prior to moving to Bend in 1998, Toby held senior positions with both Nike and IBM. Toby's passion for education started when she worked as a telephone operator with General Telephone that later became Verizon. Through their generous tuition benefits, Toby was able to get her AA in business, a bachelor's of science in business administration, business management, and later went on to get her MBA. Toby became really interested in developing a learning intervention for people with learning differences and people with dyslexia when she saw how misunderstood they could be, even being labeled as lazy or disobedient, when really what they were dealing with was learning differences. Toby and the members of SOLID have been especially concerned with the impact of the pandemic on low-income children, children who might not have sufficient computers in home for the entire family, or even sufficient bandwidth to access online education, virtual education. Please welcome our very own Toby Bayard.
Thank you. Can everybody hear me?
I can.
Okay, great. Okay, I'm going to give you a little history of SOLID. First of all, Supporters of Literacy in Deschutes County, or SOLID, was affiliated with another organization first, and that was the Friends of the Bend Libraries. I'm going to call them FOBL. And FOBL was formed to help pass Deschutes Public Libraries vote that established their tax base, in other words, their operating budget. And when you pay your property taxes, 0.55 of 1% goes to the Deschutes Public Library. And FOBL held book sales to raise monies for the Deschutes Public Library programs and projects. And I was the book sales manager from 2015 to 2019. We held our book sales for the last, I'd say 15 years in the cellar of Bend's original library, which is their admin building. It was built in 1938. And in March of 2019, an ice dam formed on the roof of the admin building, and it flooded the elevator shaft, and the walls wept and the carpet got wet. But the big deal for us was the elevator shaft being flooded. It was unsafe. It still worked, but we couldn't count on it. And the Americans with Disabilities Act requires that when you have handicapped people attending an event, you have to give them safe access and egress, which we could not do. The Deschutes Public Library already wanted that space that we were in back anyway, and they gave us 1 week to move out and empty the cellar where we were selling the books, of all of our books and equipment. And we had about 30,000 books. And there was no way that we could find a place to store all of our equipment and our books in a week. And so they gave us another alternative, and that was to put all of our books in the landfill, which broke our hearts, but we didn't really have an alternative. So they paid to have a crew come in, pull all the books off the shelf, put them in carts, take them upstairs to the waiting trucks, and take them all to the landfill. So we were homeless and bookless. And I made a bunch of phone calls, 131 to be exact, to try to find a new location. And my co-founder, Bill Borthwick, made one phone call to his daughter, who is on the the Bend La Pine School District Foundation Board. And she made a call to a board member who happened to be her neighbor across the street. And he said, oh, you know, when North Star Elementary was built, it pulled a lot of kids away from a couple of different elementary schools nearby. Let me check and see if any of them were made, you know, the modular units that they used for overflow classes were made vacant. And one was. And we were able to rent that for a very good monthly rent that we could live with. And then we went on this frenzied donation effort to replace all of our books that we lost with new books. So again, I want to emphasize, we lost 30,000 books. We replaced 30,000 books. It was an amazing effort, and still kind of stunned that we could do it. So we lost our location in March of 2019, and in the end of July, we held a $5,300 book sale. And all the funds that we raised went to the Deschutes Public Library. And we had 2 more sales that raised an additional $4,800. So we gave the DPL about $10,000 after we lost our location. And in December of 2019, the Friends of the Bend Libraries gave the DPL retained earnings of $115,000. And I want to emphasize this was their money. All of the money that we raised went into the Summit Bank, and they had access to it. We gave them these funds. And the next month, which we had expected, we were wondering why they asked for the retained earnings. And the next month, they asked all of their 5 friends groups to dissolve and said that their library foundation was going to do all further fundraising. So we kind of expected that. And the book sales team, which was we were one of 9 board members of the Friends of the Bend Libraries, we decided to form a new solid board, and we did. And serendipitously, we were able to attract Stephen Clarquist as our treasurer. He is an attorney for 501c3 nonprofits, a tax attorney, and he was the guy that set up the Deschutes Land Trust, which is now a $15 million 501c3. So by the end of January 2020, we were a 501c3 in our own right. We don't ever expect to be a $15 million 501c3, however. We hope not. We're going to be giving away all our money. So here's a picture of our new bookstore. And you can see that along the front of it, it has a metal fence, and that is actually a wheelchair ramp. So we have terrific Americans with disability access now, which we didn't have before. I don't know how many of you have ever tried to park downtown on an early Saturday morning, but it was really hard. And we held quarterly book sales for the Deschutes Public Library and the Friends. But people always complain that, oh, we can't find parking downtown. Well, now we have a 2-acre parking lot, which is terrific. The bookstore sits on a playground. And so kids can go outside if they get antsy while their parents are shopping in a book sale. And we have monitors outside to make sure they stay safe. We also, in the old location, I don't know if any of the people that are here and listening actually attended a Friends of the Bend Libraries book sale, but there was no kids book area in the basement. We had to carry big boxes of books upstairs to the library conference room, and people could shop in 2 different places. It was kind of a hassle. And the best thing about this for us is that we can be open anytime, whereas before we could only be open on once a quarter. But now we can be open anytime that kids are not on the school grounds. So that's very, very wonderful for us. And the address of our location is 3790 Northeast Purcell, but we're not in the school. We're in this little modular building, and Purcell terminates on its north end in Yeoman. So if anybody's trying to find us, you just go all the way to the end of Purcell and turn right on Yeoman and come into our parking lot, and there we are. I'm just going to show you some pictures of the inside of our bookstore. On the left-hand picture, you can see that that room has our kids' books that are stacked up against the wall back there. We have about 4,000 kids' books. And our books sell for $1 to $2 throughout the whole bookstore, not just kids. And this new location also holds about 30,000 books. And our hours are Saturdays 10 to 2 and Wednesdays 2 p.m. to 5 p.m. So we held our first public book sale as Solid in January of 2020, and it raised $4,200. And we were planning on using those funds, and we did actually, to make grants, literacy grants. And we planned an April sale as well, and you can see our little flyer over on the right-hand side of the screen. But COVID stopped that, and we just held another book sale in August, the beginning of August, that raised $2,500, which is not very much, but we had required people wear masks at that sale, and we think we lost a lot of people because people didn't want to mask up. So we also sell on site. I mentioned that our hours are Saturdays 10 to 2 and Wednesdays 2 to 5, and people can come in and shop during those times. And that earns us about $600 a month. And about $300 of that $600 is the used bookstores in town shopping with us, because when we sell our books for $1 to $2, they can, make, a couple 100% on the markup, and still, be able to get rid of those books, and they're not really taking a big risk. The other $300 a month is private shoppers or people that sell online. And we are now starting to sell online ourselves, and that is raising about $750 to date. We've sold 1 or 2 books for $300. Actually, 1 book for $300. We had no idea. In the past, we were pricing that book probably at $1. Anyway, I have at the bottom here that if you want to donate books, you can go to literacyanddeschutes.org. That's our website, and click on the donate tab. But I just want to say that right now we are full. Everybody is cleaning house during COVID, and very few people are venturing out during the Delta variant to shop. So we really don't have any room for more books unless they're just extremely marketable. So now I want to talk about the reason we're doing what we're doing. Solid is focused on helping kids that are struggling. Why is literacy so important to a community? Multiple studies show that increasing community literacy breaks a cycle of intergenerational illiteracy and poverty, and it dramatically decreases youth's criminal acts and incarceration. That's because it dramatically increases high school graduation rates. So when kids are in school, they're not out creating, havoc. It also increases the community's pool of skilled workers and decreases unemployment rates. It decreases teenage pregnancy. It decreases community's rate of domestic abuse. And that is because people who are illiterate and working in laboring jobs, as laborers, the only jobs they can get, are frustrated and feel looked down upon. And so the kids of literate parents are far more likely to succeed in life. This is really interesting to me. I don't know how other people feel about it, but we're not born wired to read. And I didn't know that when I formed Solid. Language occurs naturally, vision occurs naturally, and comprehension occurs naturally. But we have to form circuitry in our brains in order to link language, comprehension, and vision. And in order to read, those 3 parts of the brain have to work in concert. And the problem with that is that written language is very recent. It's about just over 5,000 years old. It started with the Sumerians in Iraq, who used clay tablets, to track transactions between parties. And instead of, they had no other way to remember that, okay, we bought 20 bushels of wheat from you, and we owe you, 6 goats or something like that. They had no way to do that. And so they developed these clay tablets with this kind of hieroglyphic looking things that marked who owed who what. And the same thing is true with the Egyptian hieroglyphics. Some of us think that written language was developed to track history. It wasn't. It was to track commerce. We're a commercial group of people. So in order to learn to read, the brain has to build these neural circuits, and not all brains evolved to do that. And the dyslexics are the brains of dyslexic people just don't work in the same way as the brains of people who don't have dyslexia. And that's 12 to 20% of the population. And people are wondering, well, why is this still in the gene pool? Well, one of the very cool things about dyslexics is they tend to be very abstract thinkers. And dyslexia occurs in people with all levels of raw intelligence. It tracks the overall public in terms of intelligence. But because of the ability to think abstractly, a lot of our scientists and great business people, including Einstein, Newton, Darwin, Edison, Gates, Buffett, Jobs, John Lennon, Cher, Anderson Cooper, I could go on and bore you with all the people that have dyslexia and have managed to overcome it because they learned to read. So COVID-19 is having a devastating impact on the public schools and on kids. Last year, we had to resort to distance learning, but it's a Band-Aid. And teachers lack the training to teach remotely. Teaching young kids requires a lot of animation, personal animation, and charisma and excitement to get kids to, for instance, when you're learning to read, you first take a syllable, you take a word and you divide it into syllables. Well, in a classroom, kids are taught to clap out the syllables like Toby, Karen. And when you do that remotely, you're not really getting that same excitement in the classroom where kids are marching to the cadence of syllables. It's just not nearly as interactive or personal. And so you have a 6-year-old, which the attention span of a child is 3 minutes for every year of age until age 9. So a 6-year-old has 18 minutes of attention span. Well, if there's anything else going on in the room and without parents, they're making sure that the child is actually learning, they lose interest. And I have friends that are teachers that are tutoring using Zoom remotely, and they say it's just impossible to keep the kids engaged, even though they're talking to them and trying to engage them. It's even on a one-on-one basis, it's just very, very hard. The other thing was that last year, we had a lot of technology problems that cost precious instruction hours. And so kids without parents to help them with homework are struggling. And I don't know about you, but I wake up in the middle of the night a lot of times and just think, what's going to happen to these guys? How are they going to make it in the world? So what if they don't get help? Well, COVID interrupts the process of learning to read. And this is the real linchpin of the presentation that I'm making, is that the reason why kids are not going to learn to read is because school districts go out and they buy their curriculum on the market. And that's like the architecture of these schools, the school's approach to learning is these packaged curricula. And they're generally inflexible. Certainly, they're flexible enough so that each teacher can take that architecture and develop lesson plans based on it. But the assumption is with curricula that kids will learn to read between kindergarten and 3rd grade. Upon entering 4th grade, they can read to learn. Well, if they can't read to learn at grade level, at 4th grade, they're not going to ever catch up. 80% of our brain growth happens between the ages of 0 and 7. And as you get older and older and older, it's harder to learn anything. I don't know how many of you have tried to learn a foreign language in your 60s or 70s. I'm married to a French guy. I've been studying French for, well, I live with French, and it's still hard for me. It's hard for everybody to catch up, but it's especially hard for latchkey kids and dyslexias, people with dyslexia. So Solid is developing a collaborative program with the Boys and Girls Club, and I'm very excited about it. We have a group of reading assistants who are providing reading assistance to kids with homework and to help them with their concepts of learning to read. And this partnership was with the Boys and Girls Club of Bend. And 60% of the kids in the Boys and Girls Club of Bend are on scholarships, which means that this is an after-school program, by the way. And 60% of the kids come from low-income families that can't afford to pay for this after-school support for their children. So what we're doing is kids are attending regular school, and then they're being bused to the Boys and Girls Club sites. And there are 2 sites. One is over in Southeast Tempest by Bear Creek, and one is downtown, just across from the main library and a bit south. And the kids arrive and they're grouped in by grade cohort in large classrooms. And then Solid's reading assistants are going to be focusing on 2nd and 3rd graders. And I might add, and I hope I don't mispronounce her name, that Carol Loesch, the president of the League of Women Voters, is one of our reading assistants. So the students arrive and they have iPads with homework assignments. And the reading assistants are going to help them with their homework and help them to do things like break words into syllables and decode the sounds within those syllables. And we're going to have training sessions to help people do that. The commitment is 2 hours a week, and no teaching background is necessary. We will provide training, as I said, and the program starts the week of August 4th and will be ongoing. So what does Solid do, being so small? We're a small new organization. We have 13 volunteers in our organization itself, and then about 20 reading assistant volunteers. So how can we expand our reach? And we have decided that the only way we can do this is to partner. And we always have partnered from the very beginning. We partnered with the Deschutes Public Library when we were friends of the Bend Libraries. And now we're partnering with Bend Lapine School District. They're our landlord, and we do a lot for them too. I'll talk about that in a moment. We also are partnering with Decoding Dyslexia Central Oregon. Its founder, Sharon Belushi, is my mentor and helped me to understand, even though I've lived with a person with severe dyslexia, I had no idea what dyslexia really was or why it caused people not to be able to read. And Sharon and I decided that it was really important to have kids tested before they went into school. And so we worked together to apply for a grant with the Central Oregon Central Oregon Health Council. And we wrote a grant that we won for $5,000 with Healthy Beginnings. And Healthy Beginnings has a mobile clinic that goes around to schools on a scheduled basis, and people bring their children in and they're tested for hearing and vision and all kinds of different things, but they've never been tested for dyslexia before. But the grant that we got added that to the rest to the offerings. And so now kids are able to be tested to see if they're able to read easily or whether they need extra assistance. And what's cool about that is that there's a law that requires schools to actually work with kids who can't do things like read and set up an individual educational plan for them. So these kids are going into this, starting out with school with people knowing that they need help. We also work with the Family Access Network, we work with Smart Reading, and we work with the Ponderosa PTA. So when we partner, the most important thing for us is to remember that we are there to help. We're not going to be able to launch any big programs on our own right now. We will someday, but right now we're just still getting our feet under us. So these are challenging times for the Bend Lapine School District. They're the 5th largest district in Oregon. I didn't know that. I recently discovered it. And COVID is going to impact them for a long time. And not only that, I'm sure that most people in the league know that there's a lot of public discord right now. There's a lot of conflict about whether kids should be attending school in person or whether the school districts can resort to distance learning if the Delta variant becomes too widespread. And also there's a big debate about whether or not kids should have to wear masks in class. So what Solid is doing is focusing on the areas of greatest need. And we have identified 3 areas. We've identified low-income families, single-parent families, and literacy-challenged kids. And we build on whatever already exists with our partners, and we work through local partners. And we look to organizations like the Family Access Network, Bend Lapine Schools, and the court-appointed Special Advocate Program and others to find out where there are families or kids who need help. The school district obviously knows where they have kids that are on IEPs or individualized education plans and may need a little bit of help, extra help. And we work with illiterate adults too. I personally do that. I'm working right now with a 55-year-old man who can't read. He can read things like man and gas and restaurant and words that he has to know, he has to know them, but he can't read at all. And the problem is that when you get to be 55 and you can't read, you start guessing. And it's very hard to break him of the habit. When I show them the word like dog, show him the word dog, he'll guess, and he'll just start guessing words that start with the letter D. So it's kind of hard to keep him on track, but we are making some progress, and I'm feeling better and better about it all the time. So what do we do with the funds that we raise? Our original goal was to make $20,000 a year in literacy grants. And had we been able to have book sales the way that we planned, we could have done that. But because COVID, we were formed just at the same time that COVID arrived in New York City. So it made it hard for us. Before we realized how bad COVID was going to be, we did make a $5,000 grant to 3 Title I schools. Roslyn Elementary and Lapine Elementary are both in Lapine, and Ensworth Elementary is in Bend. And we worked through these schools and through the Family Access Network to put books, $5,000 worth of books, into the families of the low-income families that were members of these schools who had kids in the schools. And then we've made a $350 cash grant to Smart Reader. They have a tiny little office and they run out of space for all their books. And so they give us their excess books and we give them money when they ask for it. And then we make sure that those excess books go places that are needed. We don't sell that many kids' books. We mostly give them away. And then the last year and a half, we've made about $1,500 in classroom grants. What that is teachers, let's say that you taught 3rd grade and now you're dropping down to 1st grade. Well, you need 1st grade books in your classroom. And so we allow those teachers to come into our bookstore and just pick out the books that they need to populate their new libraries for that particular grade. Every year we make $1,000 a grant to the Ponderosa PTA just out of gratitude for them letting us use their building. And this is something that I've worked on hard, which is to get books into the families who are members of the Confederated Tribes of the Warm Springs. And I work with a 5th grade teacher, Mark Hubler, and he comes out once a month. And I give him all the books that we have donated on Native Americans. And then he gets to pick whatever other books he wants to take back. And he gets those books in in the homes of the people in the tribes. So since we've been formed, we've made about $10,000 in grants, which was half of what we wanted to make, but we're doing the best we can. So in conclusion, the gift of reading is priceless, and we are so determined to make sure that everybody that needs help, that we can, given the scope that we have and the size that we have, we're looking under every bush to try to find more and more people that we can help. And it just depends on the size, our size, and how much bandwidth we have. So with that, I'm going to turn it back over to Karen.
Karen, you're muted.
Thank you.
All right.
Toby, I'm really impressed with the amount of networking that you've actually done since you began Solid. One question I have, since we're a fairly small group today, I am glad to read all the questions that come up in chat, but I wanted to offer an option to you. There's 17 on our call. Would you prefer that I read the questions, or would you rather have people who are interested in asking questions unmute themselves and ask the questions directly?
I'd like to have the questions asked directly.
Okay, that is fine. So anyone who would like to ask Toby a question, please raise your hand so we don't have multiple people talking at one time, and then just go right ahead. I see Greg Heacock's hand. Greg, can you unmute yourself?
Yes, it seems I can. Hopefully the dog won't make any noise in the background. I really appreciated hearing this. I had no idea. Just discovered Solid yesterday when I saw that you were going to be appearing. But I am familiar with your work at the library. What about COCC? They certainly have a lot of programs for training teachers, or for also working with tutoring, and the same would be for OSU Cascades. Have you done any partnering with them, reached out to them, heard from them in any way? What communication has taken place?
We have communicated with both of those organizations, and what I didn't say was last year we also had the same program with the Boys and Girls Club. It was interrupted because they got COVID in their building, but I had a lot of teachers. I have a friend that I ski with, who is the head of the COCC program, and she was going to get me some tutors to work with kids, and I have not reached out lately and tried to get that going again, but that's in our future for sure. And same with OSU Cascades.
And who is that person?
You're asking me that, and suddenly
We can communicate later.
So yes, I'm so sorry.
And next question. So if I wanted to participate, and my son's in town, he's bilingual, he's thinking of participating. He's done some teaching online, but would want to do some tutoring. Where would we check on the 4th of August?
On the 4th of October?
Is that what you? Oh, it's October. I took down the wrong information.
Yes. Well,
Okay,
you'd start with me. I keep a list of all the tutors. Good. And I'm working with Bess Goggins, who's the CEO of the Boys and Girls Club. We're just putting this program together. We had a program going last year, and then their executive director abruptly quit with almost no notice, and so our program went down the drain. But you would deal with me, and my email address is Toby Bayard, TOBYBAYARD @gmail.com.
Good.
Pretty straightforward.
Okay. Good enough. I'll be in touch. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Well, the next question looks like it's from Susan Cobb, and she has used the hand raise icon. So anyone else who has questions can please do that, so they don't have to keep holding up their hand. Go ahead, Susan.
Thank you. Toby, I really didn't have a question. I just wanted to say how impressed I was with how much work you've done in spite of COVID and these hard times that we're dealing with. And so congratulations. You should not feel bad about the fact that you haven't done as many grants as you had planned to do. I think what you've done is incredible. So here to you and the people that have worked with you.
Thank you very much. It's a labor of love.
I think one of the things that was coming to mind for me as Toby was speaking was never doubt that a small group of committed, thoughtful citizens can change the world. In fact, it's the only thing that ever has. And of course, that's a Margaret Mead quote. But it certainly reminded me of you, Toby.
Thank you.
One thing that interested me was what you mentioned about the Boys and Girls Club, and I know it's in the very formative stages. And could you describe a little bit more of what your plans are with the Boys and Girls Club?
Sure. So we are going to have I have a list right now. I think I have 18 volunteers that are committed. We're going to first background check them. That's Boys and Girls Club's policy, and we would anyway. And then what we're going to do is people are signing up for a day each week for 2 hours, and they will get themselves to one of the 2 locations. The location over by Bear Creek is the Boys and Girls Club has a partnership with Housing Works, and there's a large apartment house, a complex on the grounds, the same grounds of the Boys and Girls Club Southeast location. So kids are not bused, they just come home after school, and then they can just walk across the parking lot and go into that building, and we'll help them there. And I have 4 bilingual tutors that are working with those kids. And then the other location, the big downtown location, what we're going to be doing is the kids are coming in after school with their iPads and their homework assignments, and they have 2 very large rooms at that location. And I was pretty insistent that we wanted a lot of space so that we could social distance. And so they found their 2 biggest rooms, and they're mingling the cohorts, the 2nd graders and the 3rd graders together. And our reading assistants are going in, and they're going to sit with a child. The child will usually self-nominate that they need help with their homework. And then we'll work with them to help them through what they're assigned to do. And for the most part, in those grades, they're going to just be learning to read something. So they're going to have to break the words of their assignment into syllables and then decode that word. And so we're just helping them with that. And it's not a one child to one tutor relationship, at least not at the beginning, but it may turn out to be at the end, that one child and one tutor will, and I shouldn't call them tutors. They're reading assistants, although many of our people are former teachers, but you don't have to be. And then we do have one woman who's Orton Gillingham certified, and OG is the gold standard in working with children, with people with dyslexia. And it's got a very structured format. And so there are 2 kids in that program, Boys and Girls Club Downtown program, who are in 3rd grade who can't read a single word. They're that profoundly dyslexic. So Sarah Compton, our tutor, we're paying her $40 an hour. We of course can't pay anybody else, but that's the only way we could get her. And she will be working with those 2 little boys, probably both of them at the same time, and going through, it's kind of a complicated way to describe how you work with a dyslexic. But anyway, she's going to be going through and helping them to sound out words and decode. Does that answer your question?
It does. We have a couple of more questions waiting. First, we had Susan Gregory, and then Kim has her hand up. So go ahead, Susan. I think you were first.
Well, I just wanted to say that I first met Toby years ago when it was Friends of the Bend Library, and I volunteer at the book sales. And I will just say that is so much fun, especially if you're like a cashier or a book counter and you see all the books that people have bought, some of which if you had seen, you would have bought first. But I just want to recommend, it's just so much fun to volunteer at the book sales. And Toby, you haven't actually stressed that. So I thought I'd just bring that up because it's, the way we raise the money.
Thank you, Susan. Susan and I sat side by side at our last book sale and worked together. It was really fun.
Yeah, that's a resounding endorsement, Susan. Thank you. Let's move on to Kim Smith, who has a question.
Well, thank you. One, I want to say what a great program that you have, and it's very interesting of how it kind of came about. It almost sounds, it's great to help the library, but since they've got the foundation and what you've turned it into is so amazing. So my question is, you've got this whole list of people that you are doing things with, like smart readers and the Boys and Girls Clubs and all that. Are they mainly grants that you're giving to these people, or is it personnel that does, or is it a combination?
It's mainly grants. We're mostly giving cash, but what we also can give is children's books, because we get so many, and I'll never turn down a children's book donation, although I'm awash with children's books right now. But we give cash when we have it. We don't have a lot of cash because we haven't been able to have book sales, and we have to pay our rent and pay for some of our expenses with the money that we make. But we're amassing money, and we're going to start making some more grants at the beginning of 2022. So we will be giving cash grants. And part of our vision and values and mission, vision and values talks about being equitable, so that we are not going to play favorites. Whoever has the strongest appeal with the greatest need, we're going to give them the grant. And then we'll continue to give away free books just as often as we can.
And a follow-up question, you said that you had you have a website and you can buy books, or the books are actually on there that people can buy, and then how do they get them after they order them?
Okay, well, we're selling on eBay, and we have one of our board members sells for us on eBay. And when we get the books in, we're still learning to do this. Like, how do you figure out that a book is high value? We don't have Wi-Fi right now, so we're all using our phones and going out and looking up on eBay and Amazon and looking at how does this book sell, and figuring out which books we have. Some books are just completely obvious. Like, we have a book that's being sold. We're trying to sell it right now, of Edward Curtis Prince. It's a giant book. It's like 2 by 3, and we know it's worth a lot of money, and we have that placed on the website right now. But that's how people buy our books, is they find us through eBay.
Any other questions at this point? I am going to put your website address into the chat, and I will also put that in echoes. It's literacy, https://literacyindeschutes.org.
That's it. Thank you.
Other questions? We still have about 15 minutes. Toby, I can ask a question in the interim if in case anyone else is thinking of a question. But you mentioned a bit the process for becoming a volunteer. You do not need to be an educator. There will be a background check. And you'll also provide some education for people who are becoming tutors. Is there any other details about becoming a volunteer? I've put in your email into the address, and like I also mentioned, we'll put the email or the website address for your organization. But any other details about volunteers? Because it is so impressive that you're doing what you're doing with 20 reading assistants.
Well, I would love to have more people volunteer, that's for sure. And I'm worried about the Delta variant, and I'm worried that some people will just shy away and not want to do it. So that's like our Achilles heel right now, is just, I mean, I've seen the rooms where we're going to have the tutors, the reading assistants, and the kids. And there's plenty of room to sort of distance and have a tutor and a child pair work together. There are no other requirements really. I'm going to have 2 training sessions. I do need, when people want to volunteer, I would need their middle name. That's how we background check them, middle name and date of birth. Did I answer your question?
You did.
I have a question.
Go ahead.
I'm a reading specialist, and I know how to train people in teaching reading. And I'd like to be able to help out in some way. Is there a way in which I might be able to do that?
Yes, and we would adore you.
Oh,
You can,
I haven't been endured in a long time. Thank you.
wow, if you could help me do the training, that would be so great because I'm not a reading specialist. I'm a former executive.
Yeah.
I'm just doing this. I mean, if you would help me conduct some of those trainings, I would be so relieved.
I'll share with you what I've been doing. Okay.
Okay, that
Yeah.
would be great. Well, make sure you have my email address.
I will.
And
Also,
here
let me
is-
just say there are literacy grants. You know this, right? From the government, and same thing that is funded. I'm sorry for the dog, but the same thing that's funded Oregon Battle of the Books. So you might want to check on that. I'm going to mute.
Okay. Oregon Battle of the Books. And then we do have a grant right now from the Crivier Foundation that is partly helping us fund what we're doing for Boys and Girls Club. Although that grant was for the calendar year 2021. And because we were not able to do the program that we were going to do with Boys and Girls Club last year, our grant is ending in December 31st, and we're going to have to give a lot of it back because we were not able to go forward and do what we planned on doing. We bought masks, we bought shields, we bought plexiglass little divider things. We bought a bunch of different things that we aren't going to be able to use. So we are going to have to give that grant back, or most of it. And I've talked to the Crivier Foundation, and she's been very nice about it. But she said, it's not your fault. And everybody else that we have given grants to are facing the same thing. Excuse me. Excuse me. But yeah, we do apply. I'm a grant writer, actually. I was a writer for much of my career. So when I have a chance, I try to apply for grants. And thank you for telling me that. And we'll have more discussions, I'm sure.
Toby, I have another question about your training sessions. You mentioned that for people who become reading assistants, there are 2 training sessions. I wondered how long are each of those sessions, and what is a rough outline of what is covered in the reading sessions or the training sessions?
They're going to be an hour. And what's going to be covered is how to work with a child to help them decode a word. So we'll first of all talk about how just to work, we have to first of all establish a relationship with the child. Now, this won't be that easy because we're going to be working with different kids. If this was a different forum, we would have a one-on-one relationship formed, but this is not that. So we're going to be covering how to take a word and break it into syllables. And a syllable has a single vowel in it. And we're going to be talking about the 44 phonemes that make up our English language speech. And so there are different sounds. We're going to be talking about long and short vowels. I'm starting out with training on short vowels because they're more complicated. A long vowel says its name. A short vowel doesn't. So like if you were to take the phrase baseball bat, you've got 3 A's in that. So you've got the base, the A says its name. That's a long vowel. Ball is the ah sound that A makes. And bat is the ah sound. So you've got A, ah, ah. And that's hard for kids to get. How do you figure out what sound a letter A makes, or the letter U? All the vowels have a short and a long version. So we'll be covering long and short vowels. We'll be covering how to break chin drops per syllable. When you say a word like my name, Toby, your chin drops, and the chin drops on each one of the syllables. Every time you have a new syllable and you say it, the chin will drop. So we're talking about that a little bit. We'll be talking about decoding. So that comes back to the sounds of the individual 44 phonemes that a word could contain. Greg probably has more to add to this.
Yeah, I'm going to ask if you would ever consider family literacy. That is, you have an awful lot of parents who didn't know how to teach their children anything, and needed themselves to be taught. And I think that there might be some interest in that in some time. I understand not to overwhelm the system that you're starting, but at the same time, if you are thinking of expanding in terms of grants and other things, certainly you have an awful lot of Spanish-speaking families that would like to help out, and they've got only one vowel sound for each
Yeah,
vowel.
it's an easier
And so
language.
there's a lot of training to go on with parents so that they know how to help their kids and how to become then aides in the school or anything else, and after school programs. So what you're starting has ramifications that could really be expanded hugely in an economy where we're trying to hire people, give employment to those who can help communities and increase the education availability to all members of that community. So I think that just keep it in mind. But I
Well,
think it's important.
I agree with you, and I've thought about family literacy, and it's just the next step. So I'm glad you even mentioned that, because really that's where it all starts, is having a household where you've got literate parents that understand what their children, what they're trying to learn. So yes, and I would love your help. I've written your name down. Hopefully you'll reach out to me.
I already have on Facebook. You can check.
Oh, I don't use Facebook.
Well, there you go.
I'm not. Oh, looks
See?
like a doodle.
It is. 16 weeks, a real handful.
Oh, how cute.
Yes. He's cute but loud. She is cute. Too cute. Thanks.
Thank you.
Okay, I've kind of been monopolizing the questions. Is there anyone else who would like to ask a question? Carol.
Just wanted to ask Toby. I've been a smart reader for many, 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 many years, and I don't know if I'd be qualified to do something like this. It sounds a bit complicated. What do you think?
No, because a lot of our people are smart readers. I mean, a lot of it is just understanding how to work with a child. And, you don't have to, when you're helping with homework, who knows what kind of help they're going to need. You don't have to get into all of the details that I just talked about. I don't want to dissuade people from trying from helping. It's any port in a storm, really. We're just doing the best that we can with the number of people. Just having somebody pay attention to a child and help them realize how important reading is huge. And don't shy away from this. I must say that I'm thinking about who I have. I have at least 3 smart readers who are going to do this, a married couple and another person. So I'm sure that you could do it. I mean, we just have to get them to not be so scared of reading.
Yeah. Well, when you start talking about long and short vowels, it's like, oh my God, that's,
No.
But if it's simple, pretty simple, I may be interested. I don't know.
Well, it's what each individual knows how to do. I mean, again, I just want to stress that it's better than nothing. And when you're sitting with a child, you can help them decode a word. I mean, we all know how to sort of sound out words like, you can just help them say, okay, what sound do you think this letter makes? And there you can help them with that part of it. And I don't even know what their homework is going to be like. I have no idea. So I'm going to have to try to do some more investigating with the school district. And that's where we try to be in the background. I don't want to stress the poor school district who's so stressed right now anyway. So we'll just do it as we go along. We'll be learning. And I want to keep doing this next year too. So
Okay.
we'll figure it out together.
Thank you.
Thank you, Carol.
And I see that Susan had her hand raised. Go ahead, Susan.
Yes, so I too was in the Smart Reader program in Sisters here, Sisters Oregon. And I did send you an email moments ago, Toby, so you have my information.
Great.
Yeah, I just wanted to say, you know, I'm of the age that I learned to read phonetically. And although I cannot spell to this day, I have no trouble reading. So I think, you know, with that kind of background, I'm sure one can use that kind of background, Carol, because you're of my kind of age group too. So
Yeah, I mean, it's phonics, really.
Mhm.
And it's something that we can all make ourselves smart on in the interim too. I mean, I knew nothing about any of this until I got interested, and now I'm kind of a junkie of that type.
Any other questions before we wrap up? We're at 12:56, so we have another 4 minutes to the meeting. Bye, Susan. Any other comments, Toby, that?
Well, I just want to say thank you so much for being, excuse me for interrupting you. I just want to say thank you so much for giving me the time to talk about our little organization, and hopefully we'll be around for a long time. I'm also would be interested in finding somebody else to just give me a hand. I'm an unpaid full-time executive director, and I also have 10 affordable housing rental units, and I'm married and do a lot of other things too. So this is a little overwhelming for me, but it's other than my marriage, my top priority. And I just love it. But I do often wake up in the middle of the night. Not only do I worry about kids, it's like, oh no, what have I gotten myself into? But so far it's going pretty well. The other thing that would help too is if people buy books from us at our bookstore. The more money we make, the more that we can make grants. So, and it's cool. We have some very cool books too.
I will definitely
Excuse
include
me.
the location of your bookstore and the hours in our Echoes newsletter for the coming month.
Thank you.
So I'd like to thank you, Toby. The amount of work you're doing actually is really amazing. And when you describe the additional things that you're doing besides Solid, it makes me feel a little like a slacker, but I am totally impressed with what you're doing. And again, really appreciate what you're doing for Deschutes County. It's a huge thing. And you're leveraging your partnerships with other organizations and getting volunteers involved. And you've even been networking on this meeting. So once again, thank you.
Thank you.
And thanks for everyone who joined the meeting. I really appreciate it.
And I'll be talking to you, Greg.
Thank you. Bye, everybody.
Bye-bye.